So today we are talking live to Rupert Springfield. So this is part of my series where I'm inviting an expat who's been moving to France, launched a business and living from this activity. And we're going to be talking both about their move and their expertise. So we are not, because Rupert is a Gîte Guru. Basically, Rupert Springfield and his husband Frank moved to France from Holland in 2015, and they bought a large gîte in glorious Dordogne. It's always a very popular place to go and live. They bought this property, they restored it, they started running a gîte. And in 2020, based on the success from this first gîte and the request that they had from many people, they also launched a second business called Gîte Guru, where they are helping people prepare and launch their gîte and make a success of it. So for those who don't know me, I'm Valerie Aston. I'm the founder of Start Business in France, and I help expatriates prepare, create, and manage their first business in France so they can focus on the business side and enjoy the new lifestyle. So Rupert, thank you so much for coming today live.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm
It's
thrilled
always
to be here.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. For people who don't know you, you're on Instagram at Gîte Guru, and we always keep in touch, the two of us, as to what's happening in the gîte sector in France. So I'm really pleased to have you here to grab your brain both on the gîte and the expertise. Before we get started and we talk more about your experience, I know that when we talk about gîte, British people know what it is, but there's some people who might watch from the US or from Asia, doesn't really mean much to them. So can you tell us what is the difference between what we call gîte, AirBnB? We talk about holiday rentals. Can you tell us what that means so we're all on the same line?
A gîte is very simply the French word for a self-catering, independent holiday home. So a place where you're going to cook and sleep and enjoy yourself the whole time. And often originally it was always kind of agricultural houses and in rural areas. So that's pretty much what it still is. But the confusion, I think, comes because it's a French word, and another word has now come into our vocabulary, which is Airbnb. Airbnb, of course, is a brand name, but they have been so clever and they have grown it so big now that we all say, oh, I'm going to book an Airbnb for this weekend, or I stayed in a wonderful Airbnb last week. And so they've managed to take their brand name and get everyone to use it to describe the actual place where they're staying, the accommodation. And in America, Airbnb are massive, so everyone talks about Airbnbs there. Actually, Airbnb is often the same as a gîte. And a chambre d'hôte in France is just a bed and breakfast, so that's rented out per night. You do cleaning of the room for the guests, you give them breakfast. You often provide table d'hôte, so that's inviting the guests to come and sit with you at your table for dinner. So that's completely different from running a gîte, where you check people in and then you leave them to have a lovely holiday.
Yeah, that's nice. So whether we talk about gîte, an Airbnb, a holiday rental, meublé tourism, we're talking about the same thing. It's renting a property, hopefully for at least 1 week. Some people might do a bit of extra services like the Airbnb or the table. So we're all on the same line. Now we can start talking about your side or your life to France. So I know that you and Frank, so you were living in Holland. You were British,
in Amsterdam,
Dutch, and you moved to France. So tell us about that move. Was it a major career change for you to come to France?
Yeah, we'd been living, well, Frank is Dutch, so he'd been in Amsterdam for ages, but I've been in Amsterdam for about 15 years. And whilst it is an amazing city, you are literally surrounded by people on every side. It's jam-packed, and after a while, I think I just found it a bit claustrophobic. And I remember having lunch with my colleagues one day, and one of them saying, I went out to the theatre last night and going to a restaurant tonight and going to an exhibition this weekend, and I just love everything that Amsterdam has to offer. And I sat there thinking, I don't anymore. I've changed. I'm not enjoying. I just want to get home and relax. And so I thought, actually, I'm not in the right place anymore. My youth is behind me, and it's time to find a new challenge and live in the countryside. And Holland doesn't really have countryside. Not the countryside.
It's a bit more
flat, full of bicycles.
Yeah.
So we came on holiday to France. And suddenly it kind of hit us that we could actually move here.
Yeah, so you moved in 2015 and you bought a large property, which now became Le Mas and Le Mazet, but at the time it was like a large property that needed quite a bit of work doing.
Yeah, we'd spent 2 years coming down on holidays and viewing, where we viewed about 70 properties in the end. And when we found Le Mas, it was this kind of sleeping beauty. You come up this long drive through some wild woods and then through some fields, and then this hamlet of agricultural buildings and homes are presented to you. And it was a complete mismatch of pigsties and barns and houses and chimneys falling down, and an old tobacco barn, which is where I'm
Nice.
talking to you from now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was this incredible little group of houses, and we immediately saw the potential, and it was within budget. But we first of all had to work out whether we could afford to do the renovations, because structurally it was good, but it needed a lot of love.
So it was both falling in love with the property, but also seeing the potential as how you would run it as an activity.
Because we were giving up our jobs in Amsterdam to move here, and okay, we haven't got children and dependents, but we still needed to replace at least a large part of that salary with the income that we would get from Gîte. So we knew from the beginning we had to take this really, really seriously. We couldn't afford to buy the wrong property that was going to cost us too much money, or a property that needed so much work that we wouldn't be able to open quickly, and we'd lose all that income from having to wait 2 or 3 years for the renovations.
So it wasn't tinted glasses, but how did you decide? Because there was quite a bit of work to be done on the property. How did you decide what you would focus on? We say, okay, we're going to start by the little Gîte, or we're going to start by this bit, which could be easily turned into something, or how did you plan that?
We had to do everything all at the same time. So there are a couple of things we didn't do, but the renovations of the 2 houses and the conversion of this was really a ruin, this barn. So converting this and doing the other 2 was our main focus. There was a swimming pool, but it was pretty rubbish, and it did last 4 years before we had enough money to put a new one in, because it's very expensive. And put in heating for the pool, and there are lots of extra things we've done along the way, but really in the first 8 months we renovated pretty much everything.
So at the website, people can go and watch lemasdordogne.com. It's called Le Mas and Le Mazet. So what you mentioned, which was interesting, is you said, from the start, you knew you had to generate an income from the Gîte, and that kind of put a different pressure on you. So what was the impact on, right, we're not joking here, this is a business. And I think some people nowadays, when people move, for instance, from the UK or the US to France, and they need a business visa, I find more of that pressure, because I've been in business for 15 years. You've been for 9 years. In the past, you did have people who would come to France, buy a property. Oh yeah, we might do Gîte. And now it's like, no, if you go for it as a business and be full on from the start, because you need to generate an income. But for you, what was the impact on your strategy? The fact that you had to generate that income from the start, right quickly.
We did as much research as we could from the Netherlands, and every time we came over and we stayed in bed and breakfasts or Gîtes when we were house hunting, we would ask questions to anyone, whether it was the estate agent or the owner of the B&B or the person selling a house. So we would try, and over that 2 years, we built up quite a lot of information about running Gîtes and different areas of France, and so that helps. And then we tried to take it as a serious business. So Frank was a theatre producer and was very used to working with budgets and deadlines.
He was in charge of the budget and the builders.
And so he took that as seriously as he would putting on, I don't know, a musical. And so I think what really helped actually was we moved out as soon as we could, having bought the place, and the builders moved in at the same time. We were literally all living here on the property for 8 months.
Wow.
And they got on with doing all the things that Frank and I just could not do. I mean, I don't even know one end of a screwdriver. Well, I do now, but when we moved here, I had no idea what you did with the screwdriver. So we got the experts in, the builders, to do all the building stuff. I focused on the marketing and the garden. Those are my 2 big things. And we decided that Frank should be looking at the budget, but also sourcing the furnishings, because we came from a studio flat in Amsterdam, so we had nothing. And suddenly we had 8 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, 3 kitchens, summer kitchen, a pool. Never thought I'd own a pool in my life. So we had nothing. We didn't have beds, we didn't have sofas, we didn't have chairs. And that was really good fun, because we live in Europe. So you can buy anything in Europe without paying extra tax, unlike the UK or the USA. And okay, there are delivery costs sometimes, but if you buy enough, then it's well worth doing. So instead of being used to trying to source everything from a small area, we had the whole of Europe as our playground.
Oh, nice.
And we were buying TVs in Germany because they were cheaper.
Were
We
you?
were buying,
Wow.
yeah, we were buying our bedding in the UK. This was pre-Brexit. We bought quite a lot of modern design furniture from Italy. Garden tables from Denmark. So yeah, it was really good fun. And I think Frank saved us literally tens of thousands of euros, because he would find the product he wanted and then spend a lot of time researching where to buy it. And that really, he took probably 3 or 4 months to source everything, every teaspoon, every smoke alarm.
That was a project in itself. It's quite good, because as you say, if you have 8 bedrooms to fit 4 bathrooms, then it becomes interesting for the shipping cost, or the traveling cost. It won't be so much. Yeah, so you definitely took it seriously.
We had to, and we still made loads of mistakes. I mean, you know, we didn't get it right.
That was my next question. Is when we talked last week, we had a little chat, and you were saying, well, initially, although we came prepared and we knew there were a few naive things that we did. So what were the mistakes that you made at the time when you created that first rental property?
We were absolutely desperate to earn money as soon as we could. So we sat down and thought about this and decided that we should offer different products to try and attract as many different people as possible, so that we could earn any money. So in our wisdom, in our stupidity, we decided to rent the gites out, so these holiday homes, as either a holiday home or a bed and breakfast. And if someone would then book a bed and breakfast room in one house, we would then have to close it as a gîte for that period and offer the other rooms as a B&B. It was the most complicated thing. And if you try and explain that to people, look how long it's taken me to explain it, and I haven't even explained it very well. So how can you do that on your website and actually get people to book? It's just never going to happen. So fortunately, we were very quickly told that actually what we were doing was rubbish, and we had to really focus on what our product was, who our target group is, and how to put our product under their nose.
Yeah, so drop the short rental Airbnb. No, Airbnb did that.
Well, for us, it just didn't work.
Yeah, it does require a lot of work for that to do. What were the other mistakes that you were doing?
Well, the other mistakes is that we didn't know you.
We spoke a while ago, didn't we? I mean, you've been
but not 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I didn't know about you. No, we made some really big boo-boos when it came to the choice of what kind of business we would register. And in fact, Frank spent, I can't tell you how long, literally days researching what we should do. But of course, the decision you make about the business you're going to register has so many knock-on consequences, whether it's about your healthcare or your pension or your right to live here as a Brit. So we tried our very best, and Frank registered our business, only to find out 3 weeks later that he'd registered it on an old French government website that they'd forgotten to take offline.
Yeah, that's not his fault.
So it wasn't very good. So our application was live, but it wasn't going to be, it was submitted, but they weren't. Nobody was going to do anything with it, and we couldn't reapply until we deleted the first application. Oh, it was a complete nightmare.
Yeah, you were in a time when it was URSAF, and then it switched to INPI, and many people got lost in the middle of nowhere. As you said, it took them a while to take it off.
Yeah.
So,
and then fortunately, we found an accountant, and he really saved us, because not only had we messed up, but we'd also made some wrong decisions in whether it be me as the micro entrepreneur or Frank or why. And so yeah, we were, thank goodness we did find somebody like you in the end.
It's a good thing to have the accountant. I think they from the person owning the property, the Airbnb and Gîte, you focus on, okay, what is our target market? How much turnover do we think we're going to make? What is our running expenses? And then you run it through by someone whose job it is to say, okay, you got this or this, you would pay so much taxes for it, so it makes sense to move on to this. And as we later on in the interview, when we talk about the changes for 2024, it's definitely, we're going to brush the surface of that topic, but it's something to keep an eye on in 2024. Anyone who starts a Gîte Airbnb or who has one and whose activity is changing, keep an eye on the changes, because France is coming up with a few things that will impact you, so very important. I know that at the start you also got your Gîte classified as meublé tourisme. So can you tell us more about this? What does it mean? How did that happen?
I think this was introduced years and years ago when the French government realized that a lot of people were renting out their spare bedroom or their second home without being registered anywhere. And even when we started 9 years ago, we didn't have to register with our village hall, with our mairie. We didn't have to do it. So I think they introduced classification as a way of trying to register who was renting out their places. And classification is basically a star rating that the Ministry of Tourism give you based on 133 questions that they answer about the size of your mattress, whether you have got a steamer in your kitchen, whether your pool is heated, whether your website is in different languages. So there's a whole massive range, all about the kind of space that you're offering, the services you're offering, and how easy it is for people to book. And in the Dordogne, there are now something like 2,500 classified gites, and 90% of them are 1, 2, and 3 star.
Are they? Wow.
Yeah, and but that's, for the marketing, that's not great. But it does relate to how much tourist tax your guests pay, because the more stars you have, the more they have to pay, because they're richer.
It does impact on price. I think when you can see on my screen, it shouldn't say I said déclaration meublée, but it's classification. So I correct the word in a moment when you're talking. But basically, I think from a French point of view as well, as you mentioned earlier, initially the gites were more like from the farming sector, farmers who would earn a top-up income from renting some properties that would restore on their farm. And then it became more professional. People were restoring houses and doing gites. But still at the time, usually the state of the property was, let's say, on the lower end of the, the finishing was like more the aunties or the grand's furniture that was still there. And when you talk about the lower stars, to me, it still reflects that a lot of French properties are not so much like expat properties. You really go for the high-end, nice decoration and so on. And some of those properties are still very low. But so basically, classification tourism. So how long did it take to get the classification? I'll just correct it.
It didn't take too long, actually. They came within a couple of months of us applying, and we spent an anxiety-ridden 2 hours going through the property with the inspector, and then discovered that we had in fact got 5 stars for our big house. We had 1 point more than we had to have, so we really scraped through, and it's really helped because of the 2,500 gites in the Dordogne, 90% are 1, 2, and 3, 9% are 4 star, and 1% are 5 star.
Wow. Yeah.
So from your marketing point of view, it really helps put yourself, in a different level.
It's a nice differentiator to be able to say, well, at least you're going to have some nice service. And as we move on to the changes later on, this thing is, to me, is the top tip that you want to remember from today. If you have a gîte in France, or you're going to create one Airbnb in 2024, you want to go for that classification meublé tourisme, simply because as the law changes, the maximum turnover you can have as a micro entrepreneur is going to be impacted by whether or not you're classified as meublé tourisme. You want to get this, so you've got the higher end of the turnover possible. And also, if we'll talk about the regime, but when you apply a standard rebate, your rebate is also higher when you have this. When you're not classified, you're going to go to very lower activities. So it's one to go for in 2024. And I know that last year you took part to a show on Channel 4 called Help I Bought a Village. And basically it was following over 1 or 2 seasons. Some people who bought a property in France. There was a couple who bought a property in Spain or Portugal. And for when I were filming you, one of them was this going through the renewal of your classification. We could see the guy going around the rooms,
measuring everything and
exactly.
testing everything and
Kind of
counting how many
complicated.
teaspoons there were, and
Yeah. So as you said,
yeah.
134. So
133 questions.
That's
And some of them are really complicated. So it's really only when you get the inspector round that you will know for sure whether you're going to get that 3, 4, 5 stars. And it doesn't cost very much to do, and it lasts. The certificate you have lasts for 5 years, so it's definitely worth it.
Definitely worth it. So how much? About 800 euros? 800 euros?
No. We paid, I think it was 150 euros per gîte.
Oh, that's good. Definitely worth it when you think about turnover potential and taxes. And Atout France is the national body in France that promote tourism of France abroad, and they have companies that they have licensed across France who can come and visit you. So definitely want to do. So while we were talking about that show, I remember the time we talked to you on Instagram. So I watched the show from France thinking, it's really nice. How was it as a gîte owner to have this thing happening on top of your summer season? Did you almost get divorced because of it? That would have been for you.
A little, it was, a little bit, but we were quite careful because obviously, well, it was a completely new program. It hadn't been on TV before, so we weren't quite sure what their focus was going to be. And having spoken to the producers, it appeared that the renovation of the property wouldn't be the only focus of the program. In the end, that is really what it's become. And because of that, we really have had to work hard to come up with storylines.
People will go and have a look at the website because the property is spot on. So I'm thinking, what are they going to do? Because the property is spot on. And you had when they were filming, you could see they were regrouping some of the activities. Like Frank was changing a window, fixing a window. You had tons of gravel brought in to do that big alley leading to your gîte.
I mean, there's always something. We've just put in an electric car charger. So they came and filmed that, but all the kind of big renovation work has gone. So coming up with those storylines, that was our responsibility, not the production company. And that was quite complicated. So that took quite a lot of time. And they come and film probably about 10 days per series, 10 different days through the year. But fortunately, they wanted to come on changeover days, and changeover days, for those who have never done them, are hell. You've got 6 hours to make the place look as though nobody has ever stayed in it before, even though people have just left it. And I end up looking like a tomato, and I slept for about 4 days after. It's really stressful. And the last thing you want is a camera in front of you when you're desperately trying to unblock a loo or
I can't remember seeing it at being mad. You must have done work, because I can remember Frank was very organized again, because he was doing some cleaning and he had that big basket where everything organized. Is that man?
But we're very lucky because one of our cleaners used to work in a men's prison in the UK for 17 years. And she said, you cannot film when I'm here because then they'll know where I am. So because of that, we were able to get out of actually having to film changeover day, a real changeover day. So that was all right. We were able to kind of, But I mean, from the response to the TV program has been incredible. Where we had, in 1 week last year, when they showed series 2, we had 7,000 people on our website in 3 days. And that's normally what we'd have in 3 months. So incredible visibility.
It's good for the visibility. You just have to be aware that it's going to be taking a lot of time from you to get the ideas. And
it's quite confrontational seeing yourself on television.
It's like, well, you're very good at it, so that's okay. So that's
thank you.
Yeah, so that I think, has the second season already been, or?
And for third season, this will be our last season, I think. Or maybe I'm not allowed to say. That's a secret.
Suspense with
but that's coming out this year sometime.
So this leads us to the second part of the interview, where we talk more about your second activity, which is Gîte Guru. And we can see already from all the research you've done, you and Frank, when you were working on your own gîte, but also the expertise that you built up working on your gîte, and for other people, you're very aware about the different rules or the business side of a gîte. And when I speak to you, it's always like, we're talking business here. You're talking about ideal customers. You're talking about product and services. You're talking about strategy, and people have to realize that's the reality nowadays of having an Airbnb or holiday rental,
Yeah.
and hence the need also for Gîte Guru is sometimes when you buy a large property, you can also feel overwhelmed by there's so much to be done. That where do you start? What is the potential for this property? And on one of the series on that show, we could see you visiting a person who had just bought a very large property, a tobacco farm or
Enormous.
something, and you think, what are you going to do with this? Because you had the huge space. So can you tell us a bit more about Gîte Guru? What do you do? What are the services that you provide with this second business?
Yeah, if you want to have a successful gîte company, a gîte business, then you need to get lots of different things right. You need to get your product right so that people enjoy it. You've got to get the price of it right, because if you're too expensive, no one will book. You need to try and lengthen your season as much as possible to make more profit. You need to be brilliant with the service. You need to be hospitable. And you need your business to function properly. You need to tell your story. You need it to be visible to the world. You have to be an expert in about 10 different things: gardening, pool maintenance, painting. It is quite interesting. I think it's much easier doing it as a couple, because Frank and I have been able to delegate who's in charge of painting or the septic tank or whatever, and we have very clearly defined roles. But it's taken us years and years and years to get to the point where we actually know what we're doing. We know what the right response to something is, and we know how to market the property, or we know what the consequences of the new tax regime might be. So we were approached about 4 years ago by a couple who were setting up a lovely gîte down the road, and they said, "Our gîte, we want it to be just like your gîte, and we want your success. How about it?" And we thought, yeah, why don't we sell the recipe? We've made so many errors. We've picked ourselves up. We've worked out how to do it better. And we've now got a 32-week season in the Dordogne, which is really, really good. We're in papers and magazines and TV, and 60% of our bookings are regular guests who come back every year. So why not sell what we've learned? And that's how we've come up with Gîte Guru. And it's really good fun, because often we have clients who have a completely new gîte. They've bought a property, they're doing it up, and they want you to come in and say, right, do this, 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 and help them set it all up. Or we have clients who already have a gîte business and have lost their momentum, have, bookings are drying up. Or
they're not doing as well as they want. Yeah.
And then we get to come in and go around and say, right, we've got 10 things you need to do immediately to improve your bookings. And it is, every time we go in, I'm like, are we going to be able to help them? And within a couple of minutes, it's like, we've got this. There are some really obvious things we can do here, normally, which don't cost anything.
Yeah, or people don't see it because they live in the property. It's like when you've been restoring it and you're breathing the property, you can't quite see what things that you're doing wrong. So how do you do it? Do you come is it like a consultation? Is it like a program where you have people over several weeks or several consultations?
It's kind of up to them. What we do with new clients is or people who are interested in becoming clients, is we do a Zoom session with them where we've got some really specific questions about how far they've set up their business, what the interior and exterior of the gîte are like, if they've been finished or not, if they need help with that, and then the communication, so it's telling the story of your gîte, and the marketing, so that's making the story visible to the world. And those are the four kind of main areas we do, and we go through in the Zoom consultation session to work out exactly what our new potential clients might need from us. And then we go. So this morning I went for the first time to meet Fee and Paul, who are about an hour away from here, and they have finished renovating absolutely beautiful gîtes, but because they're a builder and they've got really good taste, they've done it fantastically. What they don't yet understand is how to run the different facets of the business, and how to communicate on their website and through social media really well about what they're offering. And they don't know where to make themselves visible and how to use Airbnb and Booking.com to their advantage. So yeah, this morning was really good fun. And there were so many things we could pick up on, like they had a very flexible cancellation policy, making
Right.
it very easy
Yeah.
for guests to cancel
Yeah.
very
All right.
close to when they were coming on holiday. So we were able then to talk about all the disadvantages and advantages of having a flexible or a strict cancellation policy. You know, how do you protect your revenue? How do you remain competitive compared to people around you? How do you be fair when, you know, somebody needs to cancel? So it was really interesting.
That's interesting as well, because that stage where you just finished restoring the property, that's when you probably tend to get a bit exhausted because you've got so much effort. You think, yeah, we're there. And then you're going to another phase, because now it's the business phase where you really have to switch to a different mind,
Completely different.
and think marketing, booking, websites. So to have this external point of view, I think is really good to, refocus. Help you to refocus, think about the contracts, things that are going to make it easier for your changeovers. And that comes from experience. So that's
yeah,
really
exactly.
Good. What would you say are the like 4 or 5 mistakes that Gîte owners or Airbnb owners are doing at that stage, or things that you can see? I know that you said that when you're with Frank and you go and visit a property, you think, oh, we may not see it. And as soon as you walk in, you don't talk to each other, you go through and then you each have your points. Or this, it seems so natural to you because you've had the Gîte for quite some time. But what would you say are those mistakes that people are making?
I think one of the biggest mistakes are that new Gîte owners don't have a budget for furnishing the place, and I think that's a real shame, because I can't tell you how many places we've gone around where the dining table is too small to accommodate the number of people actually staying in the property, or that you've got a lovely kitchen table with lots of chairs around it, and then there's a terrace outside with a lovely table and no chairs. And they say, but the guests can just carry the chairs from the kitchen into the terrace. It's very close. And it's just, that's not what people expect anymore on holiday, or hope to have on holiday. So there are so many little things we can pick up on and make sure that they get right.
And I suppose the furniture also helps to make your space unique, because if you look at some of the websites, if you go on Airbnb and you look for a property, and I know when I look for a property, we belong to a private site of owners when we swap houses with people in different countries, and when you watch the properties, you don't know which country you're in. Or am I in Sweden? Am I in Italy? Am I in Portugal? Because it's just IKEA stuff. So to be able to personalize your property is nice.
Try not to have IKEA. Well, we have an IKEA dinner service and glasses, because then if it gets smashed, it doesn't matter. But everyone knows IKEA furniture. Everyone has it in their home. So try and give them something different. And recently we went around a Gîte where there were these beautiful pictures of elephants and dolphins, and it was like somebody had spent their life in Africa. And by the end of it, we had to say, why have you taken these photos? What's the link?
What's the connection with you?
Between these photos on the wall that have nothing to do with France or the Dordogne or having a holiday here. And they were like, oh, never really thought of that. We just like them. And then in their private parts, they had these brilliant kind of cartoon drawings of their property, quite big, and a map of France with all the different wine regions. And we were like, this is what you need in
that's what you want to see.
Something that references the local area.
That's
interesting.
Quite fun. It's because when you talk about the communication, there's a communication on your website and social network, but it's also the story of the building. And usually when you buy a property in France, that property has a whole history, the connection with the local history. People love to hear about that. So searching their history or telling a story. And some people I know do that. They write more about the historical side to help you make a better story. But it makes a huge difference, because at least you're staying in a unique place. I know when you were talking about this, is basically you saying, look at the property from the guest point of view, not yours. It can be tricky to do, but imagine you were, or if you live next door, just say you're going to stay there for a weekend as if you've never been before, so you can see what's missing or it might help. Or if it doesn't help, then get somebody external. But from the guest point of view, what are they looking for their holiday?
Well, we invited 20 very direct Dutch friends to come and stay over a couple of weekends before we opened. And we actually gave them a questionnaire. They were really direct. But we gave them a questionnaire to fill in. And there were so many little things that came up that we had never thought of, like somebody said, you've only got one pillow per bed, and it's a really big fluffy pillow, and I need a hard pillow.
Oh, right, yeah.
So we're like, oh, you get two pillows, one soft and one hard per person per bed. We had no idea, so that really helped. Yeah.
And I know you're talking also, you said that, an Airbnb, when you think about renting for the summer holiday, is not enough. Your profit is not over the summer. Your profit is in the pre and post season. So you really have to work hard on filling these weeks.
It's a real challenge.
It's tougher because there's less people coming. So how do you feel that?
Well, one of the best ways is by having a one-bed gîte, because then whoever's coming to stay, whichever couple or single person are coming, they're not going to be with children who need to be in school. So that whole school thing has gone. And our one bed we rent out for 32 weeks a year, which is more than the 5-bed. It's much easier to find couples or single people to do that. But you're right. It all depends on your objective from running a gîte. We have 3 types of client. We have people who are retired, maybe semi-retired or retired early, and they just want to earn a bit of money on the side by renting out a gîte on their property. Then you've got the people who have bought a second home in France and they want to make it pay for itself by renting it out when they're not staying there. And then the third one are people like us who have chucked everything in, jumped in the deep end, and need to make it earn money. And if you want to earn real money, then you've got to have the longest season you can. And that is, it's a real challenge.
I know what we were talking about last week as well. You were saying, when you said know your products, or what do you mean know what you want to offer, basically, is also know what you're happy to deal with. Because when we were talking, I see a lot of people who have chateaus and large properties who do retreats or weddings. They said to me, oh, no, that's not what we wanted. So it's to be clear, okay, we want to have gîtes or Airbnb, or we want to do weddings, or we want to do retreats. It's a completely different market. It's a completely different strategy, but to know what you want to focus on is a great thing to get you started. Because if you do those mixed up, you're gonna
because a wedding venue, the wedding will normally be on a Saturday, and a holiday home you're going to rent out from Saturday to Saturday. So the two don't go. You can do a wedding venue with accommodation, but you can't do a wedding venue and a holiday accommodation. And retreats is completely different. You've got to do all the catering yourself, so you've got to have the licenses, but also the space, a professional kitchen, maybe somewhere for them to eat. Maybe you have to do transport as well if you're doing retreats to and from the airport. So it is completely different.
And in terms of business setup, you probably would go for something else like an incorporated business, so you can deduct all those expenses, or if you have a chef coming in and so on. So it's a completely different business. When I was talking to Sarah and Stephen Cole 2 weeks ago from Manor and Maker, they have a chateau with retreats. So for them, the business model is different. It's an incorporated business, and they have people coming in to do the chefing so they can focus on other things, and they do packages. So it's completely different business, and that reflects in the strategy that you apply. So coming back to the gîte and Airbnb, how would you say, or how can people differentiate themselves in a market which is becoming more competitive? Because definitely in France, from a French point of view, I can see there's more Airbnbs, French people having an investment into a property they rent. How do you differentiate from those IKEA Airbnbs?
France is actually the second biggest Airbnb country in the world, behind America. But there are, if you look at per square kilometer, how many Airbnbs there are 10 times more in France than there are in America. So France is literally saturated.
We had the gîtes before, so it was already a culture, but I can definitely see it more in younger people who are employees, who are investing into a property to earn a bit of income.
And with the Olympic Games, even in the last 12 months, huge surge in the number of places now available.
Have you heard the bashing on the radio? Each time I'm on my car, you say, do you have a property that you would like to rent for the Olympic Games? No. I don't. And it's the bashing on the Europe 2, is a French Europe 2, is like a French radio, and the famous presenters on there are promoting Airbnb. Did you know that you could rent your property? You can see they're desperate to find accommodation for the Olympic Games. But definitely it's like trying to find a way to be a more to differentiate yourself from others.
You've got to have unique selling points. You've got to have something that is different to the majority of the other people around you. And that could be that you have a massive place that you can accommodate, I don't know, 30 people. The majority of the gîtes are only 2 or 3, but you could have a much bigger place. It could be your star rating, you know, the fact that you're 5-star means you're within the 1% in the Dordogne. But it could be like the new clients I met this morning, they're passionate about motorbikes. And they have an area behind the gîte where you can lock up your bike. They've got a workshop so you can work on it. They've got tours around that you can take, telling you where to stop for coffee, where to stop for lunch. So that's actually one of their USPs. They're going to be able to really target a specific group of people who are going to love staying there.
You can always align it with your passion, because when I see people, they're into yoga, they're into bike, they're into golfing, show it off so that people will stay with you. I suppose also when you want to differentiate yourself or make your gîte more profitable, I mean, also is to try to grab more direct bookings rather than have to rely on platforms which are going to take more commission, I guess, from your bookings.
Yeah.
So another topics I wanted to talk to you about, which is more complex, so we're going to brush it up because it's not the easiest one. But basically, there are some changes happening in France around property rental. Can you tell us a bit more, and then we share our view, our side of what we've seen happening from it?
It's all a bit of a mess, to be honest. There is a real issue in certain parts of France with a lack of local housing due to saturated tourism areas where every apartment is now an Airbnb and there's nowhere for the local people to live. And this isn't just France, this is throughout the world. And in the Canary Islands now, they're having mass protests about it. So one of the things that they've come up with is the government has said it's unfair that the taxes that somebody pays when they rent out their property long-term to a local person is not as advantageous as when they rent it out short-term to holidaymakers. And that doesn't make sense. We want local housing. So the whole idea last year was really to bring this to align the two. But there was a mistake made in a clerical error, I think they called it. So it is now clear that for 2023, we have the choice of staying in this amazing micro-entrepreneur scheme, or you can go to like the proper big business scheme, which is Regime Real. For this year, we have no idea. So we're already in May and we don't know what taxes we'll be paying this year.
It's basically the law. So usually the changes of law are voted in the Loi de Finances, which is over Christmas. So like we all go for Christmas and New Year, and suddenly the law is voted, and then you discover 1st of January what's happened. And like this year, they made a mess because they got the wrong numbers in the law. The idea was to lower the turnover. So many people have their gîte and their rented Airbnb as a micro entrepreneur, or what we call the micro-big, where you have a maximum turnover allowed for that activity. And basically, they wanted to lower the threshold, saying if you go above, then you'll have to move to a different business type, become more professional. They want to push people towards more professional businesses where you'll have to produce a loss and profit account. You'll have to have a proper bookkeeping. So at least they know everything's clear and everything's declared. There's no playing around. That's what they want to see, to be able to track more what's happening. And basically, they wanted to lower it, and you have professional gîtes, and then you have non-professional gîtes. So professional is like you, somebody who's in France living full-time from their activity. Non-professional is more for people who are either retired and it's a top-up income. It's called LMNP. Or somebody who might, for instance, who bought a house in France, living abroad, but renting it. So it's called LMNP, non-professional rental. And those had a maximum turnover of 23,000 as non-professional. And they wanted to lower this, and they made a mistake. They put everything 15,000, 15,000. And basically, everybody panicked. Quickly, they said, yes, it's a mistake. It's going to be fixed. It just hasn't been fixed yet. So basically, the idea is longer term. What we're going to see is that they want to sort of cap the turnover you could have as a gîte. And if you're not classified, it looks like it would be capped at 77,000 euros. But then if you get classification meublé tourisme, which were earlier, you would go much higher. So that's why first tip is this year, whatever happens, don't wait for the law to be voted. try to get your gîte classified with Atout France, so at least you're ready. And the second thing is that according to regime you are under, what they do is they apply a standard rebate. So if you non-classified, the rebate before was basically they apply a rebate, then calculate your taxes. So before they applied a rebate of 50%, but when you got classified, it was minus 71%, which was great. So this is also a gray area where I don't think they're going to change that one because they haven't quite worked it out. They want to start pushing those who are earning a higher income towards more professional. So it's definitely.
But it's a real shame because we have no problem with paying more taxes if that's what's required, like landlords of long-term rentals have to pay. What is a problem for us, for our situation, is that we have come to France, we've seen the goalposts on the playing field, understood how the business works, what taxes we're paying, and we've decided to set up a business where we do virtually all the work ourselves. So that we have no costs or very few costs in running business. And now it looks like we are going to pay tax on our profit, and therefore the higher our costs, the better. But we've got a business which is set up not to have many costs.
Yeah, I think basically 2023, they said basically last year, okay, we got that wrong. You decide whether you want to stay under that microbic or whether you want to go under Réel Simplifié. So basically last year, most people would say, okay, I stayed like I wanted to. This year, we still don't know. And normally the laws are applied. They can't be retroactive. They've got to be voted, then applied. So I think we're going to be in between again. And especially because they're pushing all those people for the Olympic Games to rent their premises, they can say, rent your house. And then September, taxes. So I think it's going to be in between. But definitely a couple of advice from my point of view from a business setup is, so go for the classification. And my second tip is to do your bookkeeping as if you were moving to the next regime, which is Régime Réel Simplifié, where basically you tax on your profits. So which means that from now on, make sure you have a dedicated bank account through which goes all your expenses, keep your receipts or invoices, because what happens in France, you can actually decide to change regime retroactively. So in May 2025, you would be able to say, well, actually, last year, Réel Simplifié one tax on profit makes more sense to me, so I want to go back to this. But then you need to have the paperwork to be able to give to your accountant to do a loss and profit account. So definitely try to keep all of this under control. So at some point, if you wanted to switch, you could ask your accountant, just in case the law wasn't to your advantage. But the other thing is to keep an ear, listen to Rupert, listen to me, subscribe to your newsletter, and follow Rupert on Instagram. It's @Gîte Guru to see what will happen. Don't panic too much, because I see people say, this is the end. No, it's not the end. They've made mess up. They've admitted it. It's just they haven't corrected it. And they've got so much to do with the European election, the Olympic Games. I can't see anything happening until September. And they can't have pushed people to make some rental and then say retroactively saying too bad. But I think definitely my advice is in the future, it's likely that you might have to switch businesses more often to say, okay, now it makes sense to move to the next one. Or for people who have a bit of leftover work to be done, they want to add an extra room, they want to add a pool or a jacuzzi, the next one might make more sense at the time. But for somebody who starts a business from scratch, micro-entrepreneur, to me, will still work because you're building it up. It's more when you have a much larger property that it makes sense to go into an incorporated business where you can claim everything back and so on. But don't rush into changing too quickly, because we don't know the end of the story. So to me, it's kind of on hold.
But it's interesting because this is the first year that we have kept invoices for everything to do with the business. So for the 8 years, we've had no idea how much we've actually been spending on running the business. As long as there's enough money for us to go on holiday at the end of it, we're happy.
But I think it's a great habit. I always say, even if for any kind of business idea, even if you go for a micro-entrepreneur, have the dedicated bank account, keep the invoices, because at least you know how much you've made. And that's when we can compare regimes. So for instance, for people who work with me at the end of the year, I've got loads of calls where people say, okay, am I changing? And I say, well, what's all your numbers? If you can't tell me how much you've earned and how much you spent, we can't compare. But if you have a good idea, then we can say, okay, yes, it makes more sense, or hold on, you're better like this for another year. So it's definitely, you have to be on top of your numbers more than before. So you choose the tax regime and options that make sense for you. That's the big thing. But not wanting to scare everybody off.
No, there's no reason to be scared, but the goalposts are changing, and
Yeah, but
we don't yet know where they're going to be.
It goes with the French government want people to be more professional. The market is becoming professional. Your business is going to be more professional. And if you go for business visa, carte de séjour, you have to be professional as well. So one extra thing is for those of you who will apply for carte de séjour or visa, business visa, also keep an eye on this, because if you say, I'm going to be a micro entrepreneur and they know the rules are changing, they're going to say, oh, no, that's not a business. So I would say if you apply for carte de séjour entrepreneur, maybe mention entreprise individuelle more than micro entrepreneur, because at least it ticks the box of they themselves for now don't really know the rules, but as soon as you will be voted, they will apply line to line that new thing. So say entreprise individuelle réelle. The reality is that you can apply with one regime. Once you're here, you can still change and decide what is best for you at the time.
Yeah. But I think all of this shows you've got to have people who know how this works, and I think you'd be mad to try and do a visa application in France on your own. You know, there's you and lots of other people know how the process works. So you trying to understand it and get it all right is so difficult. It's the same with choosing what kind of business you want to register or how to do the business plan for your visa application. Just get Valerie to do it.
Or Rupert, it's just after a day of painting, you don't want to spend 5 hours searching the web. Earlier this afternoon, I was talking to someone for a different business, and they quoted me loads of law. I said, leave the law. Just focus on the business plan. Leave the law to me, because you're just reading stuff that doesn't apply to you or will apply to you in 2 years' time. So focus on your business, your idea, your strategy, your numbers. Then talk to an expert. Marketing, same thing. It's like going to see Rupert. It's just easier to say, okay, this is your potential. This is what you have to focus on, because you gain so much time after.
And we're going to fast track you through the whole system. You know, there are so many Facebook groups where you can find a lot of information. But if you ask a specific question about what tax you should be paying as a gîte owner, you'll get replies from bed and breakfast owners and hotel owners and campsite owners, and they'll say, oh, but I do this and I do that. Well, none of that is relevant to your situation.
Yeah, or someone who did that 4 years ago. It's like you, when you moved 9 years ago, you didn't need a visa business plan. Or like somebody who might have created something 2 years or applied for a visa 4 years ago is different from now. So I think you're saving yourself lots of time and hassle. So coming back to Gîte Guru and Mas Le Mazet. So what are your plans for the coming year? What are you going to be working on? What are you focusing on? How's the summer season looking? Or we won't be able to speak to you for 3 months now that the season is about to start.
Yeah, no, we've had guests now already for 7 weeks, so we're well into it. I think this year we're going to be focusing on keeping everyone happy who comes to stay here, and we have not got the number of bookings in for 2025 that we would normally have at this time of year. So there is something not quite right with the world. People are not planning ahead for their holidays. So we are going to keep a good eye on that to make sure, because with a really big gîte, you need people to book way in advance. It's very easy to find last minutes for a 1 or 2 bed, but for a 6 bed, you really need somebody to book probably a year in advance. So 2025 is a big focus for us at the moment, and we're always trying to do publicity and get into newspapers and things. So
you're really good at that. If you follow Rupert on it's always the Daily Telegraph.
But you too, you've also been in. Yeah, but you're still in it, so that's good. Yeah,
and
we
you're
always
working on 2025 or 2024.
God, 2025.
Oh right, wow, gosh.
Yeah, and the whole of September is booked. Is absolutely bizarre, but we've still got weeks left in August, which is the most popular normally. It's really strange. But normally at this point we would have probably 18 weeks or so, and we've probably only got 10. So we really are behind on what's normally happening.
I think I've heard the same from other people. So it might be a few last-minute bookings for those.
Yeah.
Right, Rupert, thank you so much for coming today. It was a pleasure.
Can I had some questions on via Instagram.
Yeah, go ahead.
And on Instagram, I apologize everyone that you can only see half of us, but it's really weird how it comes out. But Diane has asked, how much French do you have to be able to speak in order to do the paperwork for starting up a business in France?
None. I would say, well, basically, if you go for micro entrepreneur, it's online, so you have the Google Translate automatically. I mean, I definitely would get help from someone to register it, so you don't second guess the registration, because that's when people make mistake. But somebody with a beginner's French, you can manage a micro entrepreneur with ease because it's done online. So the scary bit is more the first papers you're receiving, which are written in 1910 French. But once you know what I relate to, it's not so bad. And I also have a course called Manage Your Micro Entrepreneur, where I teach you how to handle those paperwork, create the online account. So it just makes it easier. But it is feasible with beginner's French.
Brilliant. So there you go, Diane. It's all systems go for you.
Did you have any other questions? I don't think it was.
No, I think that was. She also had a question about why do you have square pillows in Europe?
Good
Do you
question.
have square
I have
pillows?
rectangled ones at home, but yeah, they're
so do we.
squares. Don't know why. Yeah.
No idea. Sorry, Diane, can't answer that.
Yeah, I think even IKEA has square ones.
Mm.
So thank you so much for coming on today, Rupert. It was a pleasure talking to you. So for anyone who wants to see your services and have a chat with you, so on Instagram, you're at Gîte Guru. For the stays, it's Dordogne.com and giteguru.com to ask for your expertise, tips for someone who's about to launch a gîte or Airbnb and want to crack on with the bookings and a good marketing. So thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, thank you, Valerie. Really kind of you.
It's a pleasure talking to you. In 2 weeks' time, I'll be talking to Alison Isambert, who's she's a tour guide in Paris. She's had a business for 6 years, so that would be good. And she's also preparing for tourists coming for the Olympic Games. So we'll be talking about being a tour guide in Paris, and she's a micro entrepreneur. So thank you so much for everybody who's been watching. And below the video, I will add the link so you can find Rupert and Le Mas for the bookings. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.